So today I'm going to be talking about the 5 reasons that law firms and legal employers typically do not hire you after interviews. And another thing that's important to understand about this presentation, this is also as a way, obviously, to get in positions as well after an interview. And if you do these things correctly, you will get interviews. And this is, really what I've seen based on decades of experience in this profession and watching law students and attorneys, the ones that get jobs and are the most effective. So, the thing you need to realize is that, when someone is inviting you into an interview, they really don't care about your resume. And in fact, when someone's inviting you in, there's someone that sees your resume and really hopes, they really want you to get the job. They want to hire you. And it's these 5 things I'm going to talk about, if you do them improperly, that typically disqualify, people from getting jobs. And, a legal employer may not hire you because they'll say, oh, your experience isn't right, after interviewing you and stuff. But that's almost hardly not the case. The reason they're not hiring you is because, you're doing something wrong in terms of one of these 5 questions. And people that fix these 5 things almost always end up going into interviews and doing very well. And the people that kind of instinctively understand these 5 things almost always get jobs, and the people that don't, understand these 5 things don't. So it's very important, to really kind of get the gist of what I'm talking about today. And if you do, you're going to do very, very well. So the 5 questions are, does this attorney generally want the job and want to work here? I'm sorry, actually, the first one is, will this attorney, I'm sorry, give me a second here. Yeah, does this attorney generally want the job and want to work here? Will this attorney support me and have my back? Is another one. And then, will this attorney do the job the way we expect it to be done? And will this attorney make us look good? And do they represent how we want to see ourselves? And then the final one is, do I like this attorney more than the other people I'm interviewing with? And the first 4, you really have control over. And the last one, you don't always have control over. But if you do the 4 things, the first 4 things right, then you'll typically, the person will like you. So the first one is, will this attorney support me and have my back? So it's important to understand that, and if you're a practicing attorney, I'm sure you realize this, but, many law students don't. But the legal world is a very difficult place to be in. And, attorneys are constantly surrounded by people who question you, tell you're not good enough, undermine you, and exclude you. And many attorneys, inside of law firms in particular, retire early. I know lots of attorneys that are retired early, and just, feel very, very stressed out about their jobs. And it's one of the hardest jobs out there. It really is, especially in large competitive law firms. But all law firms are very, very stressful for people to work in. And most attorneys, regardless, of who they are, even in-house attorneys feel very stressed because, they take the brunt of legal problems. Legal in-house attorneys will, lose jobs when something goes wrong that doesn't even have anything to do with them, and then they'll have to take the blame for it. So it's very difficult. And even getting into law school is tough. Very few attorneys, get into all the law schools they want to, or even the law school they want to. Most attorneys don't get interviews with all the law firms they want to or get jobs. Clients, as a general rule, are going to be unhappy half the time, and they're always questioning bills, and, attorneys are undermined by their peers. They're laid off and fired when the economy is bad, or sometimes for no reason at all. They get humiliated in front of their colleagues, and it's just a very, very difficult job. And I think everybody here that's an attorney knows how difficult it is. And it's also difficult, when you're looking for a job and facing rejection. And it's very, tough. And it's tough being an attorney. The hours are tough. It's very, very tough. And the thing to understand that is because of it's so tough. Most attorneys have lots and lots of insecurities. I know, tons of attorneys with, serious substance abuse problems that are in my, that I know are caused by the job. And I know lots of attorneys that have died in their, early 40s and, of, heart attacks and all sorts of things that I doubt they would have if, and cancers and, that they would have if they didn't, weren't in these stressful environments and pushing themselves hard. So, as a general rule, I mean, you need to realize that every person you're interviewing with, uh, the more longer they've been doing it, the more insecurities they have. And I can tell you that, I, coach and I work with, some of the most powerful attorneys in the country and people that you have heard of probably, and they all have lots of insecurities. Everybody does, and I know lots of very, very powerful people, and they have insecurities. So everybody you're interviewing with has lots of insecurities, and so the person you're interviewing really wants to know if you're going to support them and have their back, because an attorney inside of a law firm or wherever they are is surrounded by people that do not support them and have their back. Even law firms, partners in law firms are surrounded by people that don't support them and have their back. And it's a very, very hard job. And, it's very difficult to imagine, how alone and unprotected attorneys feel. And it's actually, the higher up you get, the more alone a lot of attorneys feel. So, associates can go online and they can gripe about their employers and each other, which is hurtful to employers, by the way. But they can, gripe about, what, different things, and they have each other and their friends, and, but, the more successful an attorney gets, and the more, the higher they rise, the more they're likely to feel attacked and be challenged, both internally by their peers and externally by, people trying to get their business, by, clients that may be unhappy. It's just a very, very difficult job. And it's something that, you need to understand when you're talking to someone, that whoever that person is, despite whatever, however they may act towards you and however they may come across, that person is probably under a lot of stress and, and feels very, very unsupported and is desperately looking for people around them, that are going to support them. And it's very, very important for them to feel that. And the people that get jobs are always able to communicate that they're going to be someone, that supports that person. And, I've spoken a lot about resumes and keeping things off that are likely to, communicate, things that you may not be someone that supports your employer. And, and that's one of the reasons that I talk about that things. But this is one of the most important things, and something that very few people understand. But if you understand this, you're going to go a long way in practicing law. And also, you're rarely going to lose a job, not get a job, or have issues advancing. And it's also that way when you're trying to get clients. I mean, if you're going in-house, your client is the company. But if you're trying to get clients, the client really needs to believe that you're not just kind of rotely performing a job, that you really have their back, and you're looking around corners, and you're looking for things that they're not even anticipating. And that's part of what being a good attorney is. And the best attorneys are really, their clients think that they're willing to do anything for them. And it's more about the client than their ego and so forth. And it's like that with getting a job. So like I said earlier, an employer wants to hire you, when they're bringing you in for an interview. And it costs a lot of time and money. I mean, attorneys are giving up billable hours to interview you. They have to, recruit you, which is a lot of work, and you put ads out, or, go to recruiting firms, or, however, and it's a lot, and they really want you to work out. So understanding interviewing and, this, what I'm talking about is going to help you. Employers want to hire you, and, but, the big thing to understand is, when a law firm is interviewing someone, the best law firms are the best at what I'm talking about. They're the best at surrounding themselves with people that they know will support them. And, some of the top law firms in the world, rarely, hire even laterally. I mean, they just, they keep people very, very close to the vest because they want to make sure that they have a certain type of culture and that the people are trained in some of the things that I'm talking to you about with clients and so forth. And I'm going to talk a lot about all this today. So it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of information. But a law firm can't survive if it hires them properly. The only service it has is its people. And these people are going to determine, what happens and inside of the law firm. So, this is, once these interviews start, it's a very, very, important, thing for the law firm to make sure, that it's hiring properly. And, when you do get an interview, just make sure that you're kind of following, these rules correctly, because it is the key to success. And many attorneys and law students are able to get every job that they're applying for. And this characteristic about supporting you, is really, the most important one. If you remember anything from today, you have to understand this. Because the people that don't get jobs are coming across as people who will not help their interviewers. They're coming across as, not interested, as people that look like they won't commit, as people that, don't have explanations for why they're leaving their last job, or as people that may have, personality conflicts in a series of jobs, as people that, are unavailable, or, there are all sorts of things and prejudices that an employer is looking for that they want to really, avoid. And, everybody out there, needs to be supported, regardless of who you are. I mean, everyone has insecurities. You have insecurities. Every human has insecurities. Even, the people that come across as the most confident have insecurities. Everybody wants to be accepted, but, everybody, of course, isn't accepted. Everybody wants to be loved and cared about. A lot of what we do in society and jobs is because we, a sense of love and lack that we want. And attorneys, very few of them, really get the rewards they want. I mean, it's sad. I mean, I know some of the most successful attorneys out there go, through all sorts of divorces and so forth, and they have a hard time. They're not close to their children and their families, and they're not getting the support. I mean, the most successful attorneys, people that you've heard of, I mean, they have very tough lives, and they, so they may look good on paper, but they aren't getting the support. So we, need people, everybody, you included, need people who will believe in you and see the good and not the bad in you, and and then make you feel like the person you want to be seen as, and it's very important. We want people to see, the best sides of ourselves. And you're going to succeed in interviews, and you're going to get jobs, and you're going to do well in life in terms of getting clients, and everything you do in your jobs. When you come across as someone who's going to support your interviewers and not someone who makes it all about me, or when you support people, people rise in organizations, and they rise in law firms, and they rise in the world to the extent that they're providing value and supporting other people. And that's something that you need to learn, and stop making it about you and really concentrate on how you're making the other person feel. And law firms and the people in them want to hire people that they believe are going to support and protect them. And they don't want to hire anybody that, they think will not help and defend them. So, there's all sorts of problems, in society, and there's all sorts of problems inside of law firms. And the law firm or any hiring organization is in a constant process of trying to bring people in that they believe are going to help and support them, and not take more than they give, and be givers, and prop the people up that are there, and they're at the same time they're in the process of constantly eliminating those sorts of people. And wherever you're looking for a job, you may be looking for a job there because that sort of person is being pushed out. And everybody, to some extent, is kind of like a racehorse that needs to be broken in. You know, you may have lost jobs in the past or had problems in the past because you weren't supporting the employer, or you weren't supporting your boss, or you were talking negatively about them, or you had personality conflicts, and that's why you lost your job. And that's why people, for the most part, lose their jobs. They don't lose their jobs because they made a mistake in something. They don't lose their jobs because even when you know, there's economic things happening. When there's economic, you know, crises and law firms are laying people off, they typically will lay off the people that they feel don't support them, and they will keep the people, if they can, that they believe do support them. And then if an attorney is leaving, they're going to take people with them that they believe support them. So it's very important to understand this dynamic and how you communicate that to the employers when you're looking for a job. And you know, law firms want to hire people that they feel comfortable with and that are going to support them, and they simply do not, you know, want to hire people that won't. And if your interviewer really feels like you're the type of person that's going to support them, then they're going to be much more likely to interview and hire you. And really, the great hope of everyone, you know, who's talking to you, what they really want and they're hoping is that, you know, someone comes in, you know, with a sparkle in their eye and looks like they're going to, you know, really, you know, put their head down and help you in whatever the way that that person needs help. And, you know, even partners, you know, when a law firm's interviewing partners, they're looking for the same thing. You know, they want partners that are going to help them and collaborate with them. And, you know, people want others on their side. You know, you're, you know, getting the task done, billing the hours they want, you know, protecting their interests, you know, telling them if someone's, you know, if someone's out to hurt them. And these people are really challenging to find. I mean, there's very few people like that out there. I mean, most often, and you know, with people, they're not loyal and they're out for themselves and they're against us. And so you never know when you're hiring someone, an employer doesn't, who they can trust. But that's really what they want. That's, you know, deep down, I mean, it's that connection and the ability that someone, you know, has their back. And it doesn't matter, you know, what, if you're from the same background, it doesn't matter, you know, none of that matters. It matters having people close to you that you can trust. And it's very, very rare for people to be able to find that. And, you know, that's what, you know, the employers are looking for. And so, you know, any way you can communicate that, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories today about how you can do that. You know, it's going to be helpful to you. So my first legal job, or first law firm job, I should say, I was only a few months into it, and I was asked to do an assignment like on a Friday night for a notoriously difficult partner who since has gone to prison, by the way. He just was you know, the kind of person that, you know, was out for himself and kind of hurting clients by overbilling, I think, and, you know, and not nice to associates. And but a mid-level associate was asked to help me with the assignment. And I hadn't practiced law very long, and the assignment was very, very, I mean, I didn't really understand what I was doing because I'd never done, it was some sort of discovery type responses. And everything was very, very vague. And the attorney didn't even give me the assignment. And someone else did. And you know, so the woman, the mid-level associate told me I needed to cover my back and I needed to write down and document everything that happened with the partner. And I should be doing this with, you know, the firm in general, she actually told me, like everything that happened. And at some point, you know, she just kind of got into a frenzy and she opened her laptop and she opened this giant document and it listed all the slights she'd received when she was there, things that people had said, you know, things she'd heard, and all sorts of things during the time at the firm. So she was kind of approaching her job in a very negative way, and it was very, very long. And I didn't look at it very closely, but I mean, it was enough to notice that she was kind of keeping a diary that she could use against the firm at some point. And she, documented and written down everything wrong that had ever been said to her, every rumor, just pretty much everything. And she was someone that wasn't considered very good at her job, that I learned later. And a graduate of Harvard Law School, a top, a very smart woman. And but a few months later, she left the firm after making a catastrophic error in assignment. And she wouldn't have uh, probably lost her job, if she hadn't been seen as someone that was kind of against the firm. And I'm not judging whether or not she had concrete reasons for writing everything down, but it did kind of teach me, that there's people inside every employer, that are against the firm, and they see themselves like in a contentious relationship with the firm and the people in there. And this particular woman had no allies, and she wasn't kind of part of the herd, and and seen as not a supporter of the firm. And there's probably all sorts of things that had happened to her in the past that made that happen. And that probably hurt her. So you need to understand that in every employer, there's going to be people that are adverse to the firm, and there's going to be people that are supporters of the firm, and individuals as well are the most important. There's going to be people that are individual, supporters of the firm, and there's going to be people that are individuals in the firm and ones that are not. So I've made, a lot of, mistakes as well, in my career, and I'll tell you, a couple of them today. But when people get the impression when you're working there or when you're interviewing, that you're not going to be a supporter, then they're less likely to hire you, and they're also less likely to keep you around. And they're looking for things in your resume and in your past that show that you may not be an individual supporter of people, or you may not be a supporter when you get there, because the past has a way of repeating itself. It's one. Most people learn that you're not supposed to talk negatively about your employer in an interview, and that's just the fact. You don't. And when you're going to interview, you shouldn't be saying negative things about a previous employer. You should try to be as upbeat as possible, because people want to believe that you're going to be the kind of person that's going to be on the side of who you're working for, and you're also on the side of the employer. So when I was young, I was, I don't know how old I was, maybe 17 or 18. I was working as a valet at a country club near my house, and I did it, a couple of days a week, and sometimes I did it in the evening. And then one busy evening, a more senior valet and I were standing around, and she asked me what I thought of my boss. And on a couple of occasions, one on the 4th of July, and another, I had all these tips in my pocket, just all this money, and he came up to me and made me give him all my money. And I don't think that was legal, but maybe it was. But I was very upset because I had worked very, very hard the whole day, and it was very hot, almost passed out. And then he took all my money. I didn't think it was fair, so I told her about this, and I told her I didn't like it. And the next morning, he called up my mother and said I was fired for talking behind his back. And the more senior valet had gone straight to him with my complaint. Maybe she had the same complaint. Probably she had something similar happen to her and was upset about it, but she had gone straight to him with my complaint. And what had happened to me was probably illegal, it was probably wrong, but he just didn't like the fact that I was talking behind his back and not supporting him. And because, it was a pretty decent job. I mean, you just, pick up cars and, I don't know, you can make a good living doing it. And not a good living, but it was good, summer money when you're a kid. But the idea is there's plenty of people out there that replace me. He didn't need to tolerate it, and he very quickly, let me go. And so when I got to practicing law, I started to have, similar experiences. And I'll tell you about one briefly, but it's at the last law firm I worked at. There was a female partner, and her husband was also at the firm. And she had gotten this incredibly challenging assignment working on international law. And there was actually riots going on in a part of the world that were related to this. And there were hundreds of millions of dollars involved. And And she'd gotten this assignment from a friend, but the woman, or someone that she knew, and the woman had recently been de-equitized from an equity partner to a non-equity partner, and was kind of in a bad way, and not working as much at the firm, but she had this assignment and that she wasn't spending a lot of time. And the issue was extremely complex because there were I don't remember, but there was a law of like 3 or 4 different countries. There was a Swiss bank involved where the money was. There was a third world country involved, and there was the United States involved, and then there was the federal government wanted the money, and then there was it was just all sorts of things that were going on. It was very, very difficult. I mean, at one point, I remember, working several nights trying to figure this out, all-nighters. And finally, I understood the issue, and I was able to, take what was probably a 50-page memo and get it down to, 20 pages, make it understandable. But when I tried to explain this to this woman, she was angry because, she wasn't concentrating. She was, had just been de-equitized. She was, not in a good way. And she had, and she knew that I knew about her personal situation with the firm. And she got frustrated because she wasn't able to understand it. And literally, I'm telling you, this is the most complex thing I've ever worked on in my life. It was very, very difficult. But she can be very angry with me. And then she asked her husband to read my memo to see if he could understand what was going on. And he read it, and he was able to understand it fairly quickly. Within probably 90 minutes. And then he called her in, and we both sat there in his office, and he tried to explain it to her, and she still couldn't understand it. And it required a lot of concentration to understand. I'm not saying that she was doing anything wrong. She probably had a lot of other stuff on her mind. But she was mad, and she was upset that she didn't understand it, and she was embarrassed, and then I realized she was angry with me, and I realized I had an enemy in the firm because I went from someone that had been interviewed by her when I went to work for the firm and supported by her, and I supported her and gave her the impression that I would always support her. I did a good job when I interviewed. But then when this happened, I made the error of explaining to her husband when I was sitting there with him that I've tried repeatedly to explain it to her, and she's mad at me and I don't understand what to do. And, I was right, but I should never have done that. And, and it was just bad. And I went from being in a position where I was someone, that she viewed as a supporter, and not the opposite way around. And it didn't really affect me at the firm because, she was in trouble anyway, but at the same time, it was an error. And so, when someone gets the impression that you don't support them, it's a very bad thing. And especially if that person is in power, and you need to be very careful. So, many people, believe that when they're interviewing, just because they're qualified for a position, the employer should hire them. And employers, really do not hire people just because they're qualified. And, at BCG Attorney Search, for example, everyone that I work with, I interview with, and I ask them all sorts of questions, and I try to, elucidate these sorts of things so I can, convince employers that the person's going to have their back. And I owe personally, a lot of my success to my ability to, make sure that, people that go in for interviews understand things this way, and also that, that they're represented, in letters and so forth to the employers as the sort of people that will have people's back, and de-emphasizing aspects of their experience that may show the opposite. Because anytime you're unemployed, and looking for a job, or anytime you've had a lot of moves on your resume, law firms and other employers are always going to be nervous that maybe you're one of these kinds of people that won't support them. And it's not a good thing. The employers are always trying to figure out if you have their back. And you can get into interviews sometimes, even if you're the least qualified for the job, and not the most qualified. And that's, one of my business secrets, that, and one of the things that I'm able to bring to the table when I represent people. But you can get into employers, even if you're less qualified for a job, then, if the employer thinks you're the kind of person that's going to commit and have their back. I mean, I see, graduates of, Yale Law School and other top places, not get interviews, and people from third tier law schools and so forth getting interviews with, firms that are much less qualified on paper because they come across as someone, that may not be as brilliant, but as someone that is going to have the employer's back. And just think about what you would want if you're an attorney like that and you're kind of under, assault all day by, judges and clients and other attorneys and so forth. You want people that are going to have your back. And the other thing too, when an attorney goes into a law firm, they're typically interviewing with associates, they're interviewing with partners, and associates also want people they feel like are going to have their back, that are going to be, that aren't going to be trying to show them up, that are going to, do good work, but may not be, threatening. And a senior associate, someone that'll do assignments for them and do a good job. So, and partners want the same thing. They don't want to hire people that they think are going to create problems, that they think may, not commit. Everybody wants to feel supported. Even, in some firms, someone that's people that aren't attorneys, like HR directors and so forth, or recruiting coordinators may invite you and they interview, and they also want to feel that you're not someone that's going to undermine them. No one wants to be undermined. Everybody wants to feel supported. Everyone, everywhere needs to be supported. And just because, you may be interviewing people that have, or interviewing people that have incredible qualifications on paper and so forth, doesn't mean at all that they don't need to be supported. The most confident appearing people often need the most support. So, one of the things, one of the most successful and most successful young partners I know, grew up in a bad neighborhood, or from a young age, he was actually a gang member. And, today he's, in a major firm in a major city, doing very well. And one of the things that he told me, was that, he became so successful, he believes, because he learned, from an early age, the importance of, protecting, each other. And this gang would never, tell on each other. They would always have each other's back if someone was against them externally. And they were taught, at a very, very young age, not very, very young, but I mean, teens, the importance of not undermining one another. And, and when he got older and joined a law firm, he was able to learn, draw on his past. And when he interviewed with firms, he would commit that he would communicate in this way where people believed he would have their back. And then he did the same thing with clients. And then the other thing he learned is kind of interesting, is he learned, not to fight about money inside the law firm. So, in most law firms, one of the things, partners are moving, firms all the time, and associates do too. And a lot of times, the reason the partners are moving in particular is because, they want to get the most compensation, and they want every year, they're fighting to get the most compensation, and they're trying to, say who gets credit for bringing in a client, which affects their compensation, or they're not wanting to split credit. They're saying, well, I knew this person before you did. And, even though, and this just goes on all the time at every firm. And it's just, it's exhausting, and people get upset, and, alliances form, and some law firms are literally like 50 different law firms inside of the law firm because there's just these little groups of people. And this attorney instinctively felt that, he didn't want to be part of this rat's nest. He would do what gangs do, and he would, share, credit. So in a gang, if there's a robbery, they split the money. I don't know how it works, but, he did whatever he could to, be on the side of his firm and to happily share origination credit. And he also did whatever he could to share his client's point of view and have their back. And he's been rewarded by getting lots and lots of work and getting this, huge, one of the larger books of business in the country by, not pushing back, by making the clients feel he had the back, and then making employers think they had their back. And this person started out at a relatively small firm and has risen to, great heights. And that's what happens when people believe you have their back. And very few people out there, really are able to communicate in that way. And because this person shares origination credit and so forth, he actually, doesn't have the same sort of stresses that most people in law firms have. I mean, that is a huge secret. There's not people that are mad at him all the time. He may not make the highest compensation, but this outlook of, really having people's back, having your clients back, which he really does, and having your peers back and so forth, has enabled this person to go from maybe the equivalent of not like a second or third tier law firm to a first tier law firm, and to making millions and millions of dollars a year at a very young age, being without a lot of stress. And that's what happens to people that learn these things. And you should do what you can to learn this stuff as well, because it will help you. So when you're interviewing, all they're trying to do, most people, is figure out if you're going to be the kind of person that's going to support them. And they want to get the sense that you may see their point of view and protect them. And most attorneys never find people that don't. But you can see, all around the country, various attorneys that, and very successful attorneys, they typically have people that are very close to them and their associates who become partners and so forth, that they know, have their back. And so, most successful partners take people with them. Most, successful, associates are able to work very closely with certain partners that will have their back. And, if you want to make partner, by the way, and I apologize for people that are listening to this that are already partners and so forth, but if you want to make partner in a law firm, in most cases you need a sponsor, and that sponsor will be someone who believes that you have always had their back, and that's how it works. So people without sponsors don't make partner in law firms, and so understanding this dynamic is important to not just getting the job, but to rising into being very, very effective in your job. And, so you need to understand the whole idea of supporting and having someone's back and communicating that and really doing that, because, no one, succeeds in a vacuum. Everyone needs people that have their back. I mean, if you're a well-known politician, regardless of the level you're at, you need people that believe and see things from your point of view. Whether it's, you need a lot of people to support you. So your interviewer needs to really believe, that you're going to support them. So years ago, I was given the responsibility of, interviewing someone for a position with a federal judge I was working for. And the top choice for the job was someone who flew into, where we were, the city I was in, Bay City, Michigan, from outside the country, outside the state. I mean, I think they came from, I don't know, California or something. And the interviews are going very well. And the interviews are typically, a half day because it has to meet everyone. And, but one of the things is, at the time there were, sort of like, reviews written by people that had been before the judge, and, written reviews, and then those were published in some book, that people could buy, and then our people, that could go view in the law library at school or whatever. And some of the reviews were less than favorable. I mean, they just, everybody that's in the public limelight, in some cases, I mean, is going to have, in most cases, it's going to upset people. Every powerful judge, attorney, politician, or anybody is going to have people that are upset about them. And that's important to understand. I mean, if you, are interviewing with a firm, there's people saying negative things. I mean, typically, other people are mad at people when they challenge their self-worth, so if you say something negative about someone, like I did the woman I was working for, that challenges their self-worth. People are upset if they challenge the status quo, or they take sides, against people or groups. It's just but whatever reason, no one was without enemies. And so, when you approach interviews and so forth, and you've heard negative things about a firm, or you've heard negative things about a particular employer, I want to be very clear with you that, that first of all, you don't know what it's like to be, or what any employer is like, until you've actually spoken with the people. So just because one person has been upset because they may have lost a job, or they've got other things that have happened that have made them upset. I mean, there's people that will go to any employer and look for trouble. So just because you've read things like that does not make it a bad place. And the best places typically, will often upset the most people. It's kind of depends, but you need to understand that, if you go into interviews with the idea that there's something negative about this employer, and you're going to sniff it out because you read a review somewhere, or you heard somebody say something, you're going to show it and you won't get the job. So you can't think that. You have to be looking at the positive. Now, you can always reject jobs after you get them, or ask questions after you get the job, but you need to be very, very careful because people do not want to hire people that they think are, have heard negative things about them, and and are parroting back. So this particular guy, was the top choice, but he had read some reviews, and and so what he did, he was very close to being hired, and then he started asking me, about some of the negative comments about the judge that he'd read, and how did I justify it? It's like, what was I going to say? As if like I had to defend the judge, and I did. I defended the judge, and you should always defend your employers, and the judge learned about it, and the guy didn't get the job. So, I believe if they hadn't done that, they would have gotten the job. But all they showed was that the person was, unable to commit to the judge's point of view. And why would you want to hire someone that's coming in with these doubts and so forth? It would not be the right thing. And the way he asked the question, gave the impression he believed in it, and that it was difficult. It would be difficult, and so that is just, not something that you should be doing. You shouldn't ask people to justify negative things. You should understand that negative comments typically come when, when a law firm or an employer is actually trying to enforce the quality of the people that are there, and keep supporters there and not outside the firm. And so, one thing is, if you want to know, how, I interview people, I interview people kind of all the time, who don't get jobs because they appear too guarded, and not, like people that I believe are likely to defend me and be a potential problem. I mean, that's, honestly, in most organizations, the process of keeping people around and getting rid of people and hiring new people is really, people the employers just wanted to keep positive types of people around, and it's very important. And I personally, I mean, this is just me, and it's not everyone, but I don't like working in large offices. I mean, I have offices that contain a lot of people, but I don't like necessarily working in them. I tend to, not like them because there's all sorts of alliances and so forth that are going on, and politicking between people there. And, so I like people, I prefer a smaller circle of people that are close to me, that I can trust, that have my back, and I can rely on, rather than being in this kind of giant, rat's nest, I guess is the way to put it. And most partners in law firms are like that. They keep a small group of people around them, and people, that they can trust, and not the other way around, because they don't want people saying negative things about them and so forth. So, once again, I mean, everybody wants to be supported, and every interviewer is looking for this. And I certainly look for this when I'm interviewing people, and, and everybody does. And people want, there's no sense having people, if you're an interviewer or if you're an employer, next to you or around you, that are not necessarily your supporters, because if they're not supporting you, then then they're undermining your efforts in front of your clients, in front of your other people. And people that aren't supporters, by the way, they kind of bring everybody around them down. They sap the enthusiasm of other people, and it's just a bad thing. So some of the best people, I've interviewed in the past. I mean, I'm just, thinking back in, the past couple of years have done an exceptional job when they're interviewing, showing they'll be supporters. Even if, when they started, they were not very good at their job. One guy I'm thinking of not too long ago, showed up for a position, with a business plan, and I think it was a second interview after we talked, and some things he would do to, help me, and opportunities I was missing, and improvements he would help me make if I wanted to, based on what I said in the first interview. And I was amazed. I mean, that's a supporter, and I was very, enthusiastic about him, but unfortunately it was a sales position and he didn't have good sales skills, but he really had a lot of enthusiasm, and it was really kind of cool. And I felt like he would be a supporter, and he was hired. Another person came in for an interview, and I was talking to them, and I maybe was a half hour in an interview, and they had told me about several things I'd written that they liked, and that I was underutilizing, and that I could do different things with, and I was very astonished that this person had taken the time to read things, because their interview was for a position doing IT related work, and that made me feel like the person could understand my point of view and was a supporter. Other people that I've seen, have just, showed up for interviews and done very well. They've smiled. They've talked about how they wanted to work hard. They seem to like and respect me, and they, told me they wanted to help me build the business and everything. And frankly, I mean, I'm also, like attorneys, surrounded by, people that are trying to, tear me down, and everybody is. And so if you have people around you that are like you and respect you and make you feel important as an employer and interviewer, you're really going to want to hire them over, people that don't. I mean, I'm just thinking, the other day we interviewed someone, and I wasn't the interviewer, but it was for an administrative role, and the person was asked some questions about their experience, and they said, "Oh, it's on my resume." So that person isn't going to work out. And the interviewer needs to believe that you like them. They want to believe that they can trust you, and all that's going to go a long way towards getting a position. The employer needs to think you like them, and and they need to believe that, and they need to believe that you actually like them. And that's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's, interviews are not supposed to be, about personal things, but, the employer wants to get a sense of whether or not they like you and they trust you, and whether or not they think you like them. Because if they think you like them, then they're going to think you have their back. So that's why they always talk about things that are important, like eye contact is important. They, and people that don't get interviews. So, I had an experience. It was kind of interesting. It was a couple of years ago, and I wanted to hire an entry-level attorney. And so I called UCLA, and they sent me the people. And this is when I wanted to do it. It was kind of in the late fall. So these are people that had graduated and had taken the bar, but hadn't gotten yet jobs. And so the people that I interviewed from the career services office were the people that hadn't been able to get hired. And it was interesting because the people that came in, had bad handshakes. Their eyes were down, and they weren't making contact. I would ask them questions, and they would kind of, not answer me fully, and, kind of hold information back, and, weren't communicating with a level of enthusiasm, and and some people just seem dishonest. I mean, so it, and I wouldn't say dishonest, but I would say not connecting like in an honest way. Like you didn't get a sense of why what would why you would want to hire them. So those are all kind of important thing and components. So the interviewer wants to get a sense of whether or not the person likes them, and you need to connect with the people you're speaking to, be likable, and you really want to try to like the interviewer and not see negative in them. So they need signals, and the most important thing is they don't want to hire people that are going to cause trouble. They want to hire people that are going to sit down and do the job and not make trouble. They want everything. They want to feel stress-free, and they want supporters. So you really need to think about that. And people, by the way, are tribal animals. So, what happens is, people come together, and the people that come together tend to have shared interests and backgrounds. And we all need tribes. I mean, a family's a tribe, then your employer's a tribe, then your city and your state and your country, all these are tribes. And, but people, come together against external forces that are hostile. So, a country has enemies, companies have enemies, and a company kind of is a group of people or a law firm that comes together, and then they go out into the world to make money, and they're supposed to protect each other. And so, when a lawyer is looking for people, they want to find people that are part of their tribe, and they look for reasons that you might be part of their tribe by having things in common, like schools are one, of course, but interests are another. Backgrounds are another, and there's all sorts of things they're looking for. And your employer, of course, is part of that group that has people externally that are against them, and they want to have someone that has their back. So early in my career, I was interviewing for a bookkeeper to work with me, and I'd had the experience of, since I was young, I had run an asphalt business in Detroit and had met all these successful business owners, and then I'd always seen noticed that these successful entrepreneurs that I met would always talk very, very positively, or in a very positive way about their bookkeepers, and they would always kind of be somewhere in their office, and they would always say they would work for them for a long time. And I thought that was interesting. Why would these people that are so successful always have these bookkeepers close to them? And so I realized that there was something between managing money and having people close to them that was very, very important. And so there are out there, it's people that are good at bookkeeping and so forth tend to stay with the same person for a long period of time. And the same thing with attorneys. They'll tend to work very closely with someone in their company for a long period of time. So, after countless interviews, the person I hired was someone who'd worked for her previous employer for about 20 years before he sold his business. And, I realized that, she must have had his back if she worked for him for so long. And I hired her because I felt that, out of all these applicants that I had, I felt that she would have my back. And she showed up for the interview. She was smiling, happy. And the focus of her, what she talked about when I would ask her questions was about how she helped her previous boss and how she had his back, and, and imitated, and acted like she'd do the exact same for me. And so I hired her, and, and she's been, or she did end up working for me, for over a decade, and did a really good job. And, and that is the kind of person that employers want to hire. And, anybody that shows, that looks enthusiastic and gives the idea that they would help you and do a good job. So, when someone has their back, we want to hire them, we want to keep them around. And you really need to give the employer the idea that you're going to have their back. And And if they can, if they believe this, and compared to other people, they're going to hire you. And it's not, getting hired is not about your resume once you get into the interview. It really is. I mean, your resume has something to do with it, but it's really not about your resume. It's about, the employer believing that you're going to have their back, and people that work there's back as well. That's really, I mean, if I was to boil it down to anything, that's what they're looking for. They're also looking for that, by the way, and I just want to be clear, they're looking for that in your resume as well. They want to get the sense in your resume that you're going to be the sort of person, that's going to have their back. So, they're looking for, signals that show you may not be the kind of person that cooperates, that you may not be the kind of person that's likely to leave, that you're not committed to working in whatever type of employer it is. They're looking for all sorts of things like that, and they want to have people, that are going to have their back. And and they're looking for clues. I mean, they're asking themselves, does this seem the type of person that's going to talk negative about me and others in the firm? So mentioning something you read on a review site about the firm, even if it's positive, may spook them a little, because it's going to make them think that you're also looking for bad information. They're looking to see, if you're asking questions about compensation or hours early in the interview. They're asking themselves, is this person going to be unhappy with that and make an issue out of that? They're looking for signs that you may leave at the first sign of trouble. Is this person going to leave when things get difficult? Or if there's any problems in our firm or with me, is this person going to leave with their problems? People want to feel loved, and so they want to feel like, that you're going to stick close to them and support them. And it's just how people are. It's not right or wrong one way or another, but that's just the way we're made up. And so people want to feel, cared about. And it's not in the same way your family cares about them, but it is that way, in a professional setting, and especially the person that you're going to be working for. And employers are, probing, judging, and really doing everything they can to figure out if you seem like the kind of person that's going to have their back. And they really want to believe that. It's important. And just think about, what you've witnessed, in society. I mean, it's just very polarizing. I mean, everyone has different political parties. Some people care about it more than others, and they take it incredibly seriously, these political views. And groups get very angry towards one another, different types of people, and there's just general unease, and in every society, between rich and poor, between people of different races, and so people feel want to be around people that share that. So that first question, will this attorney support me and have my back, is something you need to really think about before you go into any interview, and make sure that you do whatever you can to communicate that. And when you answer questions, showing that you work very hard and commit to the people you're with. So the second question is, does this attorney generally want the job and want to work here? And after I'd worked for a judge, and was on my second job with a law firm in 2 or 3 years, I was really trying to decide whether I wanted to practice law anymore. And so I was going out on interviews with law firms. And I unlike my previous success when I was interviewing with law firms when I was in coming out of my clerkship, where I got just about every job I interviewed with, because I really wanted to work in a law firm at that point in time. This time, I wasn't getting positions with every law firm I interviewed with. I was getting some, but I wasn't getting positions. This was a very different time too. The market had gotten extremely busy, which was one reason I was getting some interviews. I was always able to get interviews, do well in screening interviews, because I would get enthusiastic and I would read about the firm, and it was kind of like, fun. But you know, after going in for kind of full round interviews and so forth, not every law firm would offer me a job. And, and certainly I would say that I was probably batting, you know, very low, probably, you know, 1 in, you know, 3 or even maybe even 1 in 4. I was like getting offers from, and I wasn't doing well. And I'm not saying that that's, you know, bad, but you know, I was not getting jobs with firms that I should have gotten a job at because I really wasn't coming across as wanting the job. And one of the things that happens to a lot of attorneys when they get older, and myself included, you know, but you know, when attorneys interview that are, you know, 10, 15, or even 7 or 8 years out of law school, is they get cynical. You know, they don't come across as really wanting the work as much. They've been there, done that. They've had, you know, billed lots of hours, and they're just not as enthusiastic about that as they once were. And then they have families, and you know. But one very well-known and smart attorney that I'd flown out to work to interview with a big law firm in New York. Which firm was it? I don't remember, but it was for a job in their Los Angeles office. And there was a very well-known attorney I interviewed with, a pretty famous attorney, and I was astonished I was interviewing with him, and he picked up very quickly that I didn't want the job. He just said, you know, I can tell you really don't want to work, you know, do this anymore, or something along those lines. And he was very direct about it, and I loved that. I mean, I thought that was so cool. I mean, I tried to, you know, convince him otherwise at the time. It's no, you're wrong, and that kind of thing. But he picked up on it, and that's what law firms are picking up on. Is they were picking up that I really didn't want the job. And you know, when you go into an interview, you need to look like you want the job. It's not necessarily about the things you say. It's about you know, how the employer you know, believe, whether or not they believe you. And you simply cannot fool your way into getting jobs that you don't want. You know, your resume, by the way, will usually tell the story if you want the job. But you know, people, when you show up to an interview, they want to see that you're excited and you really want the job. And most smart law firms, like the attorney that interviewed me, that said that to me, can tell if you don't want to work for them. They can tell, you know, if you've gone to work in a company, because people that go to work in companies or want to come back typically, you know, don't want to work there. They can tell if you move firms too often, or you want to change practice areas, or you've taken a lot of time off. You know, all these things show that you probably do not want the job. But certain people show up, and you know, they may have preconceptions and just ask questions that are kind of turnoffs. And you know, and the odds of the employer wanting to hire you are pretty low. You know, so I interview people for positions all the time, and people to work for me. And I'll just tell you that, you know, in most instances, I mean, you know, if I'm like any other employer, you know, most, you know, there's lots of applicants for every position. I mean, there's more than, you know, you can possibly get through. You know, there's tons of them. And, you know, and the other day, like I told you earlier, I was interviewing a woman for, a woman who works for me was interviewing one for a clerical position. And when she was asked about some aspects of her experience, she, you know, replied, "You can see it on my resume." And that's just a perfect example of, you know, someone that didn't want the job. You know, if you're asked about your experience, you know, you talk enthusiastically about it and answer the question. You know, and I regularly interview people to work in the placement business, you know, at BCG, you know, which is a recruiting firm, and it's very challenging to get a job because I have, you know, very high standards and certain ways of interviewing people, and I want people here that really want to work here. And you know, so you know, if I get 100 applicants, I'll probably interview one person, and out of those people, every person that I interview, I really want to hire. I mean, when I see their resume, I'm like, this person looks perfect. And I've learned, you know, based on experience, the type of resume and stuff that tends to work when I hire someone here. And but I'll typically hire, you know, out of 100 people, and maybe even more than 100, because you know, it may be, you know, 200 people or 300, I don't know. But you know, when I do interview people, I typically hire less than 1 in 10 of them. And the reason there's so few hires is the main one is they come across as not necessarily wanting the job. A lot of times someone with very good background will apply, but they won't come in with knowing enough information. They won't know about the company. They won't know that we are a legal placement firm, not a recruiting firm, which means that we work with people to find them jobs and don't necessarily go after people and try to place them in a single job. And, there's lots of information about what we do, but very few people bother to read it before an interview. And then because they're not sold up, they don't show up knowing what we do. And they're also not sold on what we do. They haven't pre-sold themselves. It comes across that they don't want the job. So this whole idea of, pre-selling yourself for a job is important. You need to really want the job when the employer is interviewing you and come across as wanting it. And it can't just be like, I want to work here. It has to be, I want to work here, like at this particular employer. And that's something that employers really need to hear. And you need to make sure that you're able to, communicate it. The employer needs to understand that you identify and understand the uniqueness and have, an interest in them specifically, that you're not just someone out there interviewing and will take any kind of job that comes along, because, they don't want to believe that you want to work there because you want a high salary, because, they're prestigious, or just because you need a job. There has to be something and many things about that firm that makes that you feel special about them. I was just thinking just now that the woman that I had a bad experience with at the firm that I interviewed, that hired me at the firm when we were doing this international research. One of the things that I told her when I interviewed was that that firm was Dewey Valentine, by the way, which no longer exists. But I told her that my grandfather had been friends with Dewey when they went to University of Michigan together a long time ago, and that he had always said, if I was an attorney, wouldn't it be great if I worked at that firm? And that I felt that, and I did. And and that right away, just coming out with that, made the employer feel special, made her feel special, and Dewey was a fairly famous guy that people thought had won the presidency, but didn't, because there was a famous cover of the newspaper. But anyway, called Dewey Beats Truman, I think, in the New York Times. But anyway, so that had made that employer feel special, and that I really wanted to work for them. And that is something that got me that job. And that's the kind of thing that you need to be able to do when you go into interview. My mother likes to tell a story about when I was younger and just picking up a puppy to take home. And we went to this house, and there was a huge litter of puppies. There were probably like 12 or 13 puppies, and they all looked the same. But all these puppies were kind of going around, and one of the puppies came up to me and wouldn't stop kissing me and jumping on my lap. And that was the puppy I chose because that was the puppy that liked me the most. And that's how employers are too. Employers typically want to choose people that like them the most. When I was in my first year of law school, I was single, and one day I was out at a bar, and where everybody in the went from the law school and so forth, and this woman walked up to me. I mean, I guess a woman or girl, whatever, and told me she'd been admiring me from a distance for some time, and asked me why I'd never spoken to her. And then she told me all these different times she'd seen me. She'd seen me in a grocery store parking lot. She'd seen me at a public pool. She'd seen me at a party. And she said I'd walk right by her and ignored her. And I didn't remember any of these times. But she was, appeared to like me a lot, and she was my type. And I was very flattered by this. And and that someone liked me so much that that was looked like such a great catch. And so 6 months later we moved in together, and a few years after that we ended up getting married. And I mean, that's the power of when someone thinks you like them, if an employer thinks you like them, if because it's a hostile world out there, and employers are like this too. I mean, when you genuinely like an employer and want to work for them, they're much more likely to want to hire you than if you do not. And the enthusiasm we have for a particular employer, like wanting the job or wanting to work at this employer is going to make us really rise above the crowd of other applicants. If we knew what the employer is, who they stand for, and so forth, then they're much more likely to hire us, the ones that do not. And by the way, the best employers do stand for something. They have a particular culture. Law firms that endure, typically you can say, certain things about them in a few words, or, what's called an elevator pitch, meaning, 3 or 4 sentences and describe the way they are. And that's usually a positive thing. And so you need to be able to tell the employer why you like them. And, think about your history of your relationships. When somebody wants us and wants to be close to us, we're much likely to reciprocate than if they don't. And if people have doubts about us, it's psychologically unhealthy. In our company, it's like that anywhere. I mean, I do whatever I can for the people that are doing a good job here, to tell them, how impressed I am with them and what a good job they're doing. And I actually send out newsletters every day about who's doing very well. And, and the people that aren't doing very well, it's hard for them. I mean, because I'm not giving them that reinforcement, and it's not positive, and they will tend to leave, and it's not good. So, when, interviewing with legal employers, you need to show them that, you're interested in them and when you want the job. And you need to do this through preparation, meaning you need to understand, if you can, the individuals you're talking to. You need to understand the people, that may be in charge of hiring you, and you need to have a lot of enthusiasm. You need to make them feel liked. And as I said earlier, I mean, employers are like people. Every employer, by the way, has all sorts of insecurities. It's often more difficult for someone, it's amazing to me that, if you come out of like a very, very good law school and you're working at a very, very good firm, it's going to be more difficult for you in many cases to get an interview with a firm that's not that great, than, in terms of its size and the prestige level of its attorneys, than it would be for an attorney that is coming from an unprestigious firm and didn't go to a great law school. And the reason is because the law firm is just going to think you're not going to like them. They have all sorts of insecurities, and employers are like that. I mean, they may be insecure about their size, that they're too small, that they're not prestigious enough, that they have some bad news that's happened about them in the past, that their attorneys didn't go to the best schools, that they don't represent the biggest clients, that they don't pay as much, that their offices aren't as nice. Every employer has lots of insecurities, just like you have insecurities. And, they're not looking for people to make them aware of their insecurities. They know their problem. They know what's different about them, but they also know and want to feel like that there's positive things about them as well. So you need to understand that, the more you can make an employer feel positive about themselves, the better you're going to be. The employer needs to feel that you like them, and you need to talk about the positive aspects of why you want to work for them, and not concentrate and make them know that you're aware of and think a lot about their insecurities and the things that are wrong with them. Because if they think that, then they're going to hire someone that's not as concerned about that as you. So, when someone sees the best in us and wants to be there for us, we're much more likely to want them. People do not want to work somewhere, who want to work somewhere are always going to do much better off in interviews than those who do not. And, in my career, I've encountered all sorts of people, with great books of business, lots of business, the best law schools, the best law firms, and so are in the right practice area. And, they can get interviews with all sorts of law firms, but many times they'll show up and act like they don't want to get the position, even if, it's a law firm that is, very prestigious. And if they show up and they act like the employer is not good enough for them, they really don't want it, the law firm is typically not going to hire them. Now, they may have other things that offset that, and the law firm may chase them, which I've seen on occasion. but in the most part, a law firm is only going to bring in people and that really want to work there, and they're only going to hire the people that really look like they want the job. And it doesn't mean you need to act desperate. I mean, an employer wants to have a little bit of chase involved, but the employer needs to think that you like them, and think about your own experience. I mean, do you like people that like you or don't like you? And anytime we think someone doesn't like us, it tends to be an issue. And in general, 1/3 of the people that we meet will like us, 1/3 of the people won't care, and the other third won't like us. And you need to make sure that the employer feels liked. So the third question the employer is asking is, will this attorney do the job the way we need and expect it to be done? So every employer, has a certain way of doing the work. Some employers want you to work files very, very hard, and put a lot of time. Others want you to process things very, very quickly. And most employers, if they bring you in, they know you can do the job. They know that you have the ability to do the job, that you're smart enough to do the job. But the employer still needs to see if you can do the job in the way they expect it to be done. And so many interviews go sideways when someone answers that question improperly. They actually, I see it a lot. I mean, I see it. A good portion of interviews that go wrong, attorneys and law students are setting limits about how they will work or how they won't work right in the interviews. I mean, it's incredible to me how many people disqualify themselves, in the actual interview by telling the employer that they're only going to do work in a certain sort of way. I mean, a big one is, asking if they can work at home a lot. I mean, it's just, or working in different settings. And it's, the thing about, by the way, about working in an office is most law firm partners, spend a lot of time working in the office, and they need people around, not always because they need you there to explain assignments and stuff, which they do, but they actually want a presence in the office, someone to keep them company, someone that makes them feel important, that's around them, someone that they can, if they have an idea, that they can discuss it with them in person. And and it's just true. I mean, this is what employers want. The fact that you are available by phone or working or more effective when you're at home or whatever isn't really important. There's these other kind of intangible things, that are important. And a lot of times, when people say one thing, they may mean another. And no one's going to tell you that they want someone in the office because they need to feel important, or they need to be reminded that they need human contact and all these sorts of things, but they do. I mean, they're human beings, and human beings need human contact. And also, most firms, where people go to the office are actually, do better. I mean, it's important. But the big thing is like the first thing I told you. I mean, attorneys need, people around them to make them feel supported. And, at home, we build a family, or most people do, or, or they have a family that they communicate with, and friends and so forth outside of work that makes them feel supported. And they need families at work too. I mean, that's just, how it is. I mean, so, talking about not wanting to work in the office and so forth when you're going to do an interview makes the person that wants to feel important and wants to feel supported, feel that you're not going to be doing the job in the way they want it done, and it's going to probably many times will disqualify you. And huge mistake that lots of people make when they're interviewing. Another one is request to leave early and so forth, and there's really nothing wrong with that. And some employers are fine with that, and others, but it's just not a good idea to try to talk about that in interviews, because you always need to remember that most employers are interviewing lots of people for jobs. Just think about when I'm interviewing people. If I have a job and I'm interviewing 10 people and 9 of them are disqualifying themselves for the job based on things they say or things they don't do, then it's difficult. So, why would you want to do anything to disqualify yourself from getting a job? And by telling the employer, you're, not willing to put in face time and so forth. Setting limits on that is only going to make it difficult for you to get jobs. And it may make it difficult for you to get a job at the firm you want. And so you need to, think closely about that. Another way, is a big mistake that attorneys make is they tell the employer how the work should be done in an interview. So they go into an interview and they start saying things like, that they know how to do things and that this is what they do and so forth. And it's not a good idea. I was once working with a company that wanted to hire an in-house attorney to do all of its litigation. They wanted to do that because they've been spending far too much money, they believed, on hiring law firms, outside to do the work. And they felt that they would be much better off if they brought someone in internally that could manage the litigation, do trials, and then hire some junior associates to write briefs and do discovery and so forth. And that was their requirement. And so I, went out and I found some suitable applicants for them, very good people. I mean, some of them were, partners at, and very, the largest firms in the country. And but the problem is the attorneys, the partners that I was interviewing for the job wanted, to do the work in their way. They wanted, to go and manage litigation, and they wanted that. But basically, they believed that they could hire law firms to do the work, and they could sit inside this company and manage the litigation, which was crazy to me. And the person that the law firm, that the company ultimately hired, had been unemployed for 6 months, but really, really wanted the job, and came across very, very well, identified with the interviewers and all the things I talked about earlier. And not only that, but he, was willing to follow orders, and that was the most important thing. They wanted someone that would do the job, in the way they wanted it done. And for me, when I'm hiring people, for example, I need people that will do the job the way that I know works. And like we're in the legal placement business, and there's all sorts of processes that we follow. A lot of times, excuse me, law firms will, people will start this job and they'll have all sorts of preconceptions about the way the work needs to be done. They'll believe, that you need to hide the care and not tell people about all the jobs, and believe that you need to, do certain things a certain way, and they'll have all these preconceptions about what we do. And as a legal placement firm, literally what we do is we make the entire market available to people, and we believe in them. And there's a certain outlook, we're partners with the people looking for jobs, and we're trying to do everything we can as a moral imperative, like to get them a job. Like everything I'm telling you now, I feel like is a moral imperative that you need to understand. I need to communicate this information. The way I think is the way people in our company think, and they're trained to think. And they're trained to make sure that we're getting, being, every time there's new positions that are good fits, we're telling them about them, that we're researching places in the market that could be a good fits, even if we don't have jobs for them. And we're marketing and positioning people in a certain way by, acting like showing that they really want to work in an employer, and showing, that they're going to commit, and all these things. And, so you need to understand attorneys in a certain way and have their back, and you need to produce good quality work. And we have very specific standards of doing things that work. People get all sorts of jobs through us that there's no way they would get anywhere with another placement firm would be impossible, with with another recruiting firm will also be impossible. And we actually make more placements when the economy's bad than when it's good, because we understand that work moves from large employers to smaller employers. There's all sorts of things that we do that work very well. And but the problem is because of the psychology of the way we operate, and because of the research intensity and so forth, we do things in a very specific way. And so when we hire people from outside that may have experience working in a recruiting firm, for example, and not, and aren't trained from day one when they're kind of blank slates, people typically don't do well because they pick up bad habits and ways of thought and philosophies and so forth that are incompatible with the way they work, and they don't do the job in the way they want it, the way we want it done, and then they become instead of supporters of the company, they become actually against the company. So the only people, because they're not doing well by following our systems, and the company cracks down on them and so forth. So, when an employer brings in people that won't do the job they want it done, it's a lot of problems. So the only people that work out here are people who do not have experience and are willing to do the job the way the company needs and wants it done. So, legal employers are like that too. Like, they want to hire people who are going to do things their way, that aren't going to be set in their ways, and are not likely to be highly opinionated. And, by the way, I hate to keep coming back to this, but, law firms like to hire people out of, similar environments to theirs. Like, so large law firms typically prefer to hire people out of other large law firms, small law firms out of other small law firms. Because they want to believe that you're going to do things in a similar way. A lot of times they don't like to hire people that have been in-house because they believe that their habits will be different, and they won't do the job in the way they want it done, that they'll cut corners and try to pass off work. They don't want to hire people sometimes from the government because of that. They they don't want to hire people from academics because the academics will overthink things too much. They want to hire people that will be able to follow directions and do things the way they want it done. And, it's like that at every legal employer. And it also, for a lot of people when, and this is especially true for older attorneys, like older attorneys tend to be set in their ways a lot of times and have developed a way of operating that works for them. But, if a legal employer has a certain way of doing things, they're not necessarily going to want to bring in an older attorney that they feel is going to work in a way that's incompatible with the way they want things done. They want people that are going to follow directions and do things the way they want them done. Different types of firms have different expectations in the quality of work. So, at a very, very busy insurance defense firm where the billing rates are low and there's a high volume of litigation, they're not going to want or have time for someone to do a ton of research on every case. I mean, they're going to want you to process things very quickly. And there's a place for every different type of practice of law. But, in a large law firm, they're going to want you to work quickly, and very in depth and produce a certain type of work. So law firms want to hire people the way they need it done. And, associates are often highly opinionated about work, or, partners may sometimes be too. I mean, they may say they don't want to go on client dinners, that they have to be home by a certain time, that they don't want to travel, that they think committees are a waste of time. And a lot of times people will just reveal and start talking about that stuff right in the interview before they have the job. And it shows that they're unwilling to do the job in the way the firm wants. And if a law firm, does need someone to go on client dinners, so they need someone that's able to travel, they're just going to hire someone else instead of you. And that's okay. I mean, I'm not saying, you have to work every place you get an interview, but if you want to work someplace, you can't be concentrating on yourself during the interview and thinking about all these things that you want. You need to think about what the employer wants, because they're going to want things done in a certain way, and that's important. People will tell, that they have specific ways of doing work. They may, talk about the reasons for leaving a firm because they want work done in a certain way. Like, I saw an associate at a firm say he wanted to leave the firm because they made him turn in his hours every day, and it was a lot of work at the end of the day. I mean, I've seen people, just for various reasons, talk themselves out of getting jobs. So any type of way that you are used to operating, and any opinions you have about how work should be done, you should be willing to ask the firm how they want things done and what they expect, and not talk about your preconceptions about the way things should be done. And this is a big one, because people show up and they say all these things about their beliefs and how they think things should be done, and that may be completely incompatible with the way the law firm or employer operates. And so, really please think about this and think about, what you're saying, because it's a big deal and it can hurt you. Okay, so the next question is, will this attorney make us look good, and do they represent how we want to see ourselves? So as a general, rule, you can get in, to an employer based on your resume, and but no one's going to hire you if they don't think you're going to make them look good and the way they want to see themselves. You're dressed, your thought, how you speak, how you carry yourself. And other aspects, reveal, how you're going to, if you can make the employer look good or not. And the employer wants to hire people that, reflect how they want to be seen in the business world and how they see themselves. You can't show up, in an ill-fitting suit at an employer and expect to get hired. I've actually seen, not an ill-fitting suit. I've seen people show up to law firm interviews, and I am not kidding, in their first, in a suit that contains the label, a men's suit that comes on the arm, that shows the make of as if, the fact, that they don't realize that has to be taken off. I mean, that's just kind of a funny story, but, when people show up to interviews, they want you to act, they don't want you to act awkwardly. They want you to talk about, not overly personal topics, which I've seen on a lot of occasions, and they don't want to, they don't want you to make mistakes that they think are going to make them look bad. So I've interviewed a lot of people that have just made horrible mistakes coming into interviews, and these are kind of extreme, but not too long ago, I interviewed someone that was very good on paper, that had the perfect experience for a job. But the person smelled like smoke, and so much so that my eyes were watering during the interview. I mean, they must have been hotboxing on the car on the way over, because it was just really bad. And then during the interview, she kept coughing phlegm into a tissue, and I wanted to hire this person, like based on the resume, but it wasn't someone I wanted representing me in the marketplace. Another time, not too long ago, I interviewed someone for a position that looked very good on paper, but they had, lots of tattoos. They had them literally up to their, chin. And, I didn't think that person would make me look good. And also all over their hands. And it wasn't necessarily because of the tattoos, it was for some other things, but that person, I didn't hire as well, I had another instance several years ago where I was interviewing this Columbia graduate who was, very highly qualified on paper. And I thought the interview went very well, but before the interview, there was a bathroom right next to my office. It was sort of private. No one really used it except for myself. And he asked to use it. And I thought, no problem. I let him use it. He was in there a few seconds, or a little short time. And then after the interview, and he'd left, I thank God I didn't make him an offer in the interview, but he peed all over the toilet seat, and just left it. Very strange, and he seemed to really want the job, but made mistakes like that. That's not the kind of person I want representing me in the marketplace. So, but the idea is how you talk, your confidence, your mannerisms, and so forth are all important. The employer wants to see themselves in a certain way, so you should take a look at, how do the people at this firm appear? Like, what do you know about them? Who do you know that's worked there? And come across as that type of person. I once represented a guy that, it's kind of a sad story, because I don't think he got a job. He dropped out of practice law, I think, and he was getting all these interviews, but the interviews would always stop after the interview. And the problem was, he had long hair and it was down to his hips, and he refused to cut it. And, he wanted to work in these top, New York kind of patent litigation firms in the Bay Area, and these firms just didn't like it, and which was unfortunate. I was representing a very highly qualified attorney a few years ago, and he lost his position and needed a new one, and he had kind of this, very, a lot of depression, about things that had nothing to do with his job. And he talked about, how his father committed suicide when he was his age and was very low energy. And I mean, I would get depressed talking to him on the phone, and he would go into interviews and kind of communicate his depression, and he didn't get hired. So, the idea is I mean, the law firm, you're a representative. And so you need to look at yourself like, how does this law firm, how do the people here and this employer, want to see themselves? And how you talk, look, and act are indicative of this. I mean, there's certain law firms, and I hate to say it, I mean, I've been doing this so long, I can see someone, in the lobby of a building or even, publicly and get a sense of what kind of law firm they work at or what kind of law firm they would work at. Because, and I'm usually right, if I know their attorney, because I can tell by the way they act and talk and so forth and their confidence level. And, so you need to understand kind of what this employer is like and, what is the reputation and how do you kind of become like that? And this is kind of tough stuff here. I mean, there's a lot to it. But in general, you need to look the part, you need to act the part, and you need to come across as how these attorneys, see themselves. I mean, if you're interviewing at a position with Greenpeace, you want to come across like, you should go in and, come across like the people you're interviewing with. But if you're interviewing with a corporate law firm, or whatever the size law firm, you want to come across and you want to look, act, and appear like the people, that you're talking with, and just realize you're a representative of them, and whatever, is important to you in terms of expressing your individuality is going to need to be sublimated, and, you're going to need to look like, the people, or at least come across as the people that you're representing. Because when you're interviewing with a firm, you're basically, you're showing how you would behave with clients, and they want to see people, that are professional, but at the same time can, to some extent, communicate in the way they want to do. And then, employers too also look up people on social media profiles, pretty much everyone. And, when they, see you on social media, I mean, that they're going to realize whether or not you want to practice law. Many times I've seen people be disqualified from jobs. I saw one woman actually get disqualified when she was an associate and she was moving with a group of, 6 or 7 partners and, I don't know, 4 or 5 other associates. And everyone was offered a job with the new firm except for her because she had something on her social media profile that said she didn't enjoy practicing law or something. And so, law firms will look all that stuff up. They're going to determine whether or not you're going to make them look good. If you have extreme politics or, there's kind of crazy pictures of you online or, whatever, they're not necessarily going to hire you. Okay, so the final question, and this is fairly quick. We're going to cover this after all this information, and then I'll take questions, is do I like this attorney more than the other candidates? And just remember that, assuming you've done the 4 things, that I've talked about so far well, this question, they're going to like you, but, to get a position, you need to be the first choice among the people that are interviewing for the same position. And that's not always an easy thing to do. I mean, in some cases, it's going to be, based on, just your personal connection with the people and what the employer has in mind. And, you can't always control it. I mean, there may be a champion you have in the firm, but then other people may not like you because of some aspect of your background, or, you may be part of the, the 1/3 of the people like you, 1/3 don't. And then 1/3 don't care, and there may be a couple people that don't like you that are kind of against you, and you're just gonna, hopefully have come across as the most likable. And, I can't tell you necessarily how to be most likable. I can give you some things to keep in mind. It's personal, and it's not something you can always control. But to get job offers, you just need to realize that, you need more people on your, side than not. And, one of the things that I found in the history of the people that I've seen that get the most interviews and the most jobs is, they have a resume, and the resume talks about themselves and their achievements, and, and but not in too in-your-face way. And but then they're very understated. Like, they don't come across as acting like they want a lot of credit for things, or and they don't talk too much about their achievements, and they don't seem like a threat or overly focused on themselves. And I hope I'm communicating that the right way, but that is one of the most important things, is that this ability to kind of be understated and likable at the same time. This is very, very important, and not everyone can do that. I mean, it's a real skill, but that's one of the it's a show of confidence, but at the same time poise, and that seems to me to be one of the most important things. And then the other thing is, you need to look human. So being human means you may have these great achievements. If you're asked, you can talk about your children, hobbies, or mistakes you've made, provided they show upward mobility. But showing, humility and how you're trying to improve yourself is very important. I've seen people, by the way, that have lost jobs and done things that were stupid. I mean, I've seen people, lots of men, for some reason, lose jobs for getting drunk at parties or things, and and making mistakes, and then they recover and they actually talk about exactly what happened. And they may look human, more human than other people. I've seen other people lose jobs for and make mistakes or things, and that really weren't that serious, and recover. So, but the thing is, making yourself look human. Talking about hobbies you like that may not interfere with the job, things that make you look human are very, very important. And a lot of times, people like to talk about their families. They like to talk about other things, and but anything you can do to connect. I mean, people are trying to bring people into their tribe, and when people are trying to bring people into the tribe, they want to identify with them, and they want to feel that, like, whatever knowledge they have about that person will enable them to connect with the person, and they want to see them in a positive light. I once heard a guy speak, and it was actually fairly interesting, and he said, which person do you like more? And he started talking about how he went to Princeton. He was the youngest person ever to be put into a partner role in this investment bank. He made tens of millions of dollars by the time he was 30. He had a beautiful wife, and he showed a picture of her, and and this was a sports car in his house, and he did all these things. And then he said, or do you like the person whose father died when he was 6 years old, and whose mother worked at a fast food restaurant his entire life, and who was beat up and humiliated and growing up in a bad neighborhood, and had all these problems, and had to wear ripped jeans and clothes to work, to school when he was younger, and was on a school lunch program, and then somehow got did very well in high school, and got into a magnet school, and then became a very good football player, and got a scholarship to Princeton, and and talked about all these things, and then almost didn't make the football team because he sprained his ankle or something. A story kind of like that, and that, and then got into a car accident with his girlfriend when he was a junior in college, and they were engaged, and she was paralyzed. So he told this kind of story, and so you're like, who do I like more? Do I like the person that had done all these things and presented himself in this very awesome way about what a great achiever he was, or do I like the person who's overcome all these things and become and is human, and is grateful for the experience he has, and for his life, and is human. So I like that story, and because I think that employers want to hire people that are human too, and so you can't, the more professional you are, even though you need to look the part, you also need to come across as someone that's human and that, you know, and connects with people. And people are going to like people that they connect with and identify with the most. So, you know, if you're talking about, you see a picture on someone's desk and it's a place you've both been, or you have, you know, you see someone with 3 daughters and you also have a picture of 3 daughters and you also have 3 daughters, or you see, you know, a picture of someone has something on their wall about a sports team they like, and you say you also like that sports team, or, you know, you try to find things that you can connect with people and that show that you're similar, and that puts people's guard down and it makes them happy and it makes them feel like you're part of the tribe. And that's just a very important thing to do to the extent you can. And, you know, so part of connecting with people is, you know, doing whatever you can to try to get them to talk about themselves. I mean, certainly you want to ask questions, but people like people that talk, you know, that allow them to talk about themselves. And so you direct your conversations to topics people are interested in, and that make them feel good about themselves. And the more of that you do, the more they're going to like you. And you want them to feel good about themselves. You want them to feel good about where they work. And you know, and you don't ask questions that make people feel defensive. You know, like I talked about earlier, the guy that asked a question about the judge, that's certainly something that would make the judge, or, you know, anybody hiring feel defensive. And if people feel defensive, there's an emotion that goes along with that, and they associate you with that negative emotion. So when you ask questions, you want those questions to associate you with positive aspects about how that employer wants to feel, you know, about themselves, or how the person you're speaking with wants to feel individually. And as a general rule, you know, I've learned that when I'm speaking to the people whose favor need, I try to get them to talk at least, you know, 70 to 80% of the time. I mean, people will think you're more interesting. They will, you know, want to, you know, hire you and be much more interested in you when they're doing more of the talking and they're thinking that you're going to listen. It's showing kind of everything that they want to hear. So, you know, anytime that I've tried to do most of the speaking and persuade someone on my point of view, they're generally less likely to be convinced. So you need to do, you know, whatever you can to try to allow the employer to convince themselves, you know, in your candidacy, rather than, you know, the other way around. Something I noticed early on, you know, in my career also, and I don't know why this is, but a lot of times, you know, the people that, it's very interesting, but a lot of times the people that, you know, are the best of the practice of law, and even a lot of times, you know, some of the people that have gone to the best law schools, you know, I noticed, you know, early on that they tend to be the best listeners. I mean, I don't know why the best interviewers are the best listeners. I don't know why I mean, the best people that interview are the best listeners. I don't know why, you know, that is, but, you know, the people that are the most successful tend almost universally to be the best listeners and ask the most questions. You know, the current mayor of Los Angeles, I remember meeting once before he was mayor, and I met him in a situation where I honestly didn't even know who he was. I mean, he was just renting out of my house when I was away, and I met him, and he actually rented it to get married, and I met him, and he asked me all these questions, and didn't know who he was, but and, you know, and he's an attorney and went to Yale Law School, but you know, the best listeners are typically the smartest people. I mean, they ask the best questions. They you know, and people like them because they get them to talk about themselves. Almost all of the most successful executives I know tend to be very good listeners. The best politicians, the best attorneys, you know, they want, and that makes them likable. So, you know, getting a position really has to do with how likable you are. So the first question is, I am a very skilled attorney. My people skills are not the best. I tend to have trouble connecting with people during interviews. Do you have any more, do you have any suggestions for how I can become better connecting with people, books or courses? Well, a couple things. I mean, the first thing is I've written a lot of articles about this sort of thing on my blog, which is harrisonbarnes.com. But really a good course and a book that I would recommend reading is a Dale Carnegie book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then Dale Carnegie actually does courses. And I guess I'm advertising Dale Carnegie. And I used to have all the people that work here do a Dale Carnegie course. And I've, had them, spent tens of thousands of dollars sending people to them. I don't think they're very expensive, but they're courses where they kind of teach you how to connect with people and to break down those barriers and to feel more comfortable around people. And I think the Dale Carnegie courses are great. I think that, they, help, people. And there's also a book, but the live course I thought was very helpful because you kind of connect with people, individually. There's lots of courses out there that I think are, really good too. There's also something called the Hoffman process, which I think is kind of good. That and I think a lot of times the big thing with connecting with people is a concentration on how we feel about ourselves, and so a lot of times people will feel insecure, and they'll think how others are seeing them in a negative light, and that's not always true, but I think that to the extent you can, break those things down, the Dale Carnegie course is good, the Hoffman process is good, any type of, way that you can, work on yourself, I think is very positive. But those are two things that I found personally very helpful. I think that, a lot of times, this is something that I personally believe in, and I'll just share it with you. There's all sorts of, positive affirmation kind of things you can get on, YouTube to listen to before you go to sleep, or self-hypnosis and things. I mean, anything you can do. A lot of times, your beliefs about yourself will be in your subconscious mind. So, to the extent you can fix that. But I like the Dale Carnegie book. I like, the course. And in terms of books, there's a interesting series that I've seen that's come out lately. It's called The School of Life, and they have, and you can get it on Amazon. And those are books that talk about. They're kind of very well done essays, and they're very personal, and they talk about various topics with things like self-confidence, and so I think that's very useful too. And other final thing I would say is if you have a problem connecting with people during interviews, maybe even bringing out your skills, like I'm very good at this, but and emphasizing maybe what you're doing wrong in interviews, and bringing out if you just are very awkward or have issues, instead of trying to play around it, sometimes bringing it up even could be helpful too, and that could be helpful. So I hope that helps. Okay, the next question is, when I go to first round interviews, I usually leave everyone I talk to smiling, but rarely get called back for second round interviews. What could I be doing wrong that's preventing me from getting second round interviews? It may be you're able to connect with people, but at the same time, in your second round, your first round interviews, you're not portraying the type of confidence the law firm sees. You may be talking about inappropriate, topics. You may be not dressing correctly. You may be coming across as someone that doesn't want to work hard, or you may not. Those are the main things that I can think of. I mean, without seeing, what you're doing exactly. But those are some of the things that I would personally think. And you may not know enough about the employer or your practice area, or really come across as having if you're a law student or attorney, or a law student, you may come across as not having enough interest, or someone that they can see, giving orders to. Let me give it in. Okay, next question. In general, do you find that interviewers are easy to form a connection with, or do they try to remain as impartial and stoic so as not to bias their decisions? I do not think, I think that anytime an interviewer is trying to remain impartial and stoic, then that's almost covering up the fact that they really do have bias, in my opinion. I mean, the most successful attorneys typically do not act that impartial and stoic. But I think if they're acting impartial and stoic, then then I would be a little suspicious. A lot of times, the interviewers that are acting impartial and stoic may be the ones that have already there's someone else they may want to hire, or that person may be a little bit insecure themselves. It was funny. I remember once I was interviewing with a big firm in New York, and I was interviewing with a tax attorney. And when I saw the guy, I thought, he was completely impartial and stoic, and was making it, and I could see it was going to be very difficult to interview. And there was a way he had positioned my chair that I was supposed to sit down in, and it was sort of a power thing where I was turned, so I had to kind of look at him like this in order to answer his questions. And I realized when I walked into his office that it was so well ordered, and he was going to be so stoic that if I sat and looked at him the way he wanted me to and just acted very serious back, he would probably like me. And I don't know how it occurred to me, but I did. And I sat there, instead of moving the chair, I sat the way he had set up the chair. And due to that, I think is something that I got the job. But if an interviewer is acting very impartial and stoic, you should be as direct as possible. But I would hope that that you would want to work at a place where you can connect with the interviewers and where they would want to connect with you. But that's just but in general, I don't think they're acting impartial and stoic to not bias their decisions. I think they're acting impartial and stoic a lot of times for other reasons. But that's just my opinion. If you can connect with them, you should. Can you talk about logistical interviews with virtual interviews? For example, should you use a neutral background to potentially hide distracting items? Also, what should one wear in virtual interviews? Assume jacket, tie, and top. Yeah, so you should dress formally for virtual interviews. You always want to show your respect for the employer, and remember, the employer wants to see themselves as that way. They want to see themselves as represented by someone that looks professional. And yeah, you should try to use a neutral background, to hide distracting items. You shouldn't use kind of a weird green screen. You just want to look, very professional, and to the extent you can. And yeah, a neutral background is good. I mean, if you have, a live, you can sit in front of a bookcase. I notice a lot of people do that. When you see kind of newscasters, at home and so forth, you see that they generally will pick out an area that is kind of a nice background, in their house, but anything, that looks halfway, normal, you should, do. Yeah. Okay. 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 This is, let's see. Is there a good way to connect with people in a law firm before going on an interview? Would you recommend it? No, you shouldn't contact people before the interview. I mean, that's a good question, but you shouldn't try to connect with people before the interview. Let's see. Okay, this question is, what is your advice for senior lawyers about the potential tendency towards age discrimination? Well, the advice is basically just, you want to go in and, show the people that you're working with, that you're going to have their back. And I've hired lots of senior attorneys to work in our company in the past, and what they do right is they come in with a lot of enthusiasm and obvious knowledge and experience that someone that's younger could possibly not have, and then also an ability to follow directions, even if they don't necessarily agree with them, and that's kind of the best thing I think that that the senior lawyers can do. I mean, senior lawyers are much more valuable with their experience. It's just I think a lot of times people seem very set in their way. So I don't think that you need to necessarily that there's nothing wrong with being a senior attorney. I mean, that's actually a very positive thing. And the age discrimination comes because I think, I mean, if you really want to get down to it, I mean, I think that the reason there's age discrimination is because people are worried that you're not going to do the job the way they want you to. So you need to give them the impression that you will. They're also worried that you may not have their back because you may be cynical because of all the bad experiences you've had practicing law, which most older attorneys have. I mean, by the time they're into their 5th or 6th year, and so they want to believe that you won't. And those are kind of the main things, and then they also want to believe, that you have, energy and so forth. But, most people, I mean, you can see people that are well into their 80s that have energy. So it's not necessarily about the energy. It's the discrimination is about, the fact that you won't do the work they want it done, and that you may not really want the job, or that, those sorts of things. Actually wanting the job is not something I think is always a weakness, but those are kind of my question about that. And if you have any more questions, that's a great question, so I appreciate it. Okay, and then the next question, let me just see here if there's any more. If you guys have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. There's a question about being a patent agent and being able to get into a position or being a scientist and wanting to be able to work in a law firm without the patent agent qualification. And yes, you can work in a law firm without a patent agent qualification as a technical advisor, but that is about the extent of it. And there are major law firms that hire for that. Okay, let me just see, there's a couple chats. I can answer those. Okay. Okay, great. Well, I think that's all. So I appreciate everyone showing up, and it was nice talking, and hopefully you guys learned a lot.